Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. Scottish Labour had their conference on Saturday, and there were many speakers. And we've already covered a little bit with Sir Keir Starmer doing an about-turn on his views on Israel. But there were other speakers and other things were said. And Ian Murray, who is the shadow Scottish secretary for the Labour Party, Scottish Labour, he was there. He was saying that Labour are resurgent, they have the momentum, and that they are going to basically whitewash the next election and take the SNP completely out, certainly of Glasgow and probably Edinburgh as well. Now, this is often, these things, shall we say, are often heard at conferences where the rhetoric is there, buns for elephants. The speakers stand on the stage and say to the audience exactly the sort of things they want to hear. And then everyone goes, woohoo, aren't we great? Cheery, cheery, let's off to the bar and have a little drinky if you can afford to. But in this case, it's more than just empty rhetoric, of course. And Humza Yousaf knows it because he does know that Labour are rejuvenated. They are coming after him. And they are likely to do exactly what they say and wipe him out of both Glasgow and Edinburgh. Let's take a look. Yes, so not simply what a politician on a stage at a conference is saying, because they do a lot of that. They do a lot of standing on the stage at conference and talking things. One only has to remember David Steele, must be 40 years ago now, something like that. And he stood there at the Lib Dem conference going, go back to your constituencies and prepare for government. And that didn't work out too well for him, did it? However, with Ian Murray, I think he's spot on. Go back to your constituencies and prepare to wipe out the SNP from huge tracts of Scotland, because it seems very likely. So anyway, Humza Yousaf handed general election warning as the SNP face risk of Glasgow and Edinburgh bloodbath. And the reason is, of course, a lot of people have now started to see through them. People who had previously given them the vote are saying, no, we gave you this, we trusted you, and look what we've got. Things are getting bad, things are getting worse, things are getting too bloody awful. Transport's falling apart, I can't get my child to see a dentist because there aren't any of them open. You can't get an appointment at the GP, the schools are awful. Everything is falling apart, and it's 17 years, and people no longer believe the BS that comes out of the SNP's collective gobs, because it isn't all Westminster. They're looking at the things for which the SNP have total and utter control, and they're seeing what an absolute mess they've made in it, and yet, all these things falling apart, and they're still spending money on foreign embassies and on international travel, so the likes of Angus Robertson can quaff champagne and caviar at 30,000 feet while feeling important. Doing sod all for Scotland, of course, but doing wonders for Angus Robertson. And he's not alone, is he? Labour's shadow Scottish secretary Ian Murray warned the SNP that the resurgent party, Labour, were looking to challenge in every single central belt seat, and polling claims it could be a whitewash. And, you know, I'm not particularly pro-Labour, but I am particularly anti-SNP. And for them to be wiped out by anyone will always be a joy. And whenever this election should be, and I personally think it'll be October, only because I think they'll want to get the election out, not the election, the budget out of the way. Hunt gets into the budget, either increases the tax-free allowance or cuts the rate slightly, something like that, does there, and then drags on, gets inflation down so that the Bank of England start cutting the interest rates a couple of percent or maybe 1% between now and October. People have got money in their pocket. They're feeling good. The misery is eeping away. And then he goes to the polls. And hopefully, probably won't win, but hopefully will save a lot more seats than he would otherwise have lost. I think that will be the plan. So I'm pretty sure it's October. But I could be wrong. I'm not a mind reader. It's just how I reading the runes, as it were. Anyway, Humza Yousaf and the SNP was sounded a bleak warning by Scottish Labour, who insisted that it was aiming for a central belt wipeout of nationalist seats at the next general election. And this could happen, with polling indicating a clean sweep in Glasgow and is a possibility for Anna Sarwar's party. But at the Scottish Labour Conference, Shadow Scottish Secretary Ian Murray indicated that the buoyant left-wingers will not be stopping in Scotland's biggest city, but also targeting Edinburgh and the surrounding areas. He is only one of 2 Labour MPs after Michael Shanks thrashed the SNP at Rutherglen and Hamilton West by-election. And boy, when we covered that, wasn't it wonderful? We knew from day one that was always going to be a Labour victory. And there was no way anything other than that would happen. It was just plain as a pikestaff. All the polling, all the feelings on the ground, all the press. And you were interviewing people, and you've seen the interviews, and people just had enough. They literally had enough of the SNP. And it's going to be the same the whole of Scotland. Anyway, he mentioned his plans for Brand Scotland, where he would launch trade initiatives to every continent in the world to promote businesses. More on that in the very next story. So keep an eye out, because that particular thing, I've got a whole video dedicated on it. See, we don't just throw this stuff together, you know. It's all in plans. Anyway, he went on and said, here in Glasgow, the birthplace of the modern Labour movement, we can turn the city red. In Edinburgh, we can deliver the Labour MPs again. In every community from Largs to Leith, we can elect Labour MPs who will stand up for you and your family, and that's the change Scotland needs. Scotland needs some change. It doesn't matter really, because all politicians are awful and all parties are terrible. But at least a party that isn't constantly looking through the lens of independence may occasionally do something that works. Anyway, the Central Belt will prove to be the key battleground between the SNP and Scottish Labour. The Nationalists currently occupying every seat in the city. However, polling has shown that Mr Sarwar's party is likely to take the majority of the constituencies, and maybe even them all. And that, of course, would be the humiliation. And if he does that, there's no way that Humza Yousaf can survive that. So that Friday morning after the election, the votes being counted, boom, 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 they're all up, they're all announced. And by lunchtime, Humza Yousaf must resign if he loses all of them, like they're predicting. Or most of them, not even all of them, most of them. He'll be seen as toxic leader, he'll have to go. And at that point, of course, there's only one natural successor, and that would be Kate Forbes. Although you want another election, another tight race and fight, only so that you can have more civil war within the party, divide it even further. Anyway, Mr Yousaf is currently focused on the northeast of Scotland, as he is currently on a party activism day in Moray, as he looks to take the Scottish Tory leader Douglas Ross's seat. Now, he's going up to Aberdeenshire and all that area and he's pushing all up there. But this is the same area that he wants to destroy because he wants to kill the Scottish oil industry. It's like, yeah, talk about putting your head in the tiger's mouth. Very brave going up there. Yes, I want the SNP to take all this, but the SNP wants to destroy all your jobs and all your children's futures. Good luck. Mr Murray also brought up his party's GB energy plans during his speech, confirming that it was still planned to come to Scotland, and he also doubled down on the windfall tax for oil and gas companies. I actually don't have a problem with that, because the oil and gas companies are making so much bloody money, hundreds of billions, at a time when people are being charged so much money for their product. No, that's just plain greed. Yes, we know that they need to deliver to shareholders, and we know they need to invest in future works, but even so, it's still a lot of money, and some needs to come back. This was criticised by those living in Aberdeen and the North East due to fears it would end 80,000 jobs in the industry. It won't. Not the small amount. A small increase won't end 80,000 jobs. The destruction of the industry will. He said, our main objective remains unchanged. Clean green power by 2030. Oh, bless, he still thinks that's even possible. It isn't. Because you can't use the big diggers that digs all the ore out of the ground on electrical energy. How do you do that when you're digging holes in the ground 100 miles out in the desert somewhere? These people live in cloud cuckoo land. Anyway, until now, Scotland has been let down when it comes to the potential of clean energy. Just a few weeks ago, he said I was in Switzerland, where the mountainous landscape had allowed them to generate 50% of their energy from pumped hydro. We have the potential to do similar, but politicians here have taken their eye off the ball. Nothing wrong with hydro. Have your hydro. Put your hydros up in the mountains and have the waters flow through and whatever. Not an issue. Generate. Fine. Big investment. Not very green. All that stuff that has to be dug out and built. But once it's built, it's done and it should last a long time. If you want to be truly green, though, nuclear. Anyway, round this off. Compare ambition, he says, blah, 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 blah. He talks about energy. I'm not bothered about that. And he says their new policy. The SNP think that nurses should pay higher taxes while multinational energy giants should pay lower taxes. That's actually true. I've got to give the Labour on that one. Because they want... they're fighting against... The SNP are fighting against the taxation of a multi-billion-pound oil company, but are raising taxes for nurses. Good. Good job, SNP. But then you've got a man in charge who no vested interest in the future, hasn't he? He's got no vested interest in the future of Scotland. So why should he bother? He can destroy Scotland. Doesn't matter. Coming up. What's truly pleasing, of course, is that Humza Yousaf knows all this to be true. He knows that come the next general election, the SNP will face a major defeat. Possibly a wipeout in those two cities. Possibly down to single figures at the House of Commons. Regardless, it'll still be humiliating. It'll be a massive defeat. And he knows if that's the case, then his days are numbered. Indeed, he already probably does know his days are numbered. But what's truly galling for him is who will take over. Because it will be Kate Forbes, and she will not have him in her cabinet. And his beloved Greens will also be booted out pretty smartish. Oh dear, what it is to be Humza Yousaf. You loser at everything. Ultimately, a man who could even end up as the last leader of the SNP. Breaks your heart, doesn't it? Anyway, I shall stop there. Thank you very much for watching. Do please hit the subscribe button, ring that bell, leave a like, leave a comment, please share the video, and I will speak to you later. Bye.